If you've watched any of my previous videos where I cover delisted Gameloft games, you've heard this spiel before. Back in the day, they used to develop ambitious video games that were, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, knockoffs of popular franchises found on home consoles. They had a knockoff Call of Duty, Halo, and Grand Theft Auto. They've also developed impressive licensed games with full-on open-world maps like The Amazing Spider-Man and The Dark Knight Rises. Today, I'm going to be talking about their Uncharted knockoff, known as Shadow Guardian, starring Jason Call. They call him that because he hears the call of adventure. You guys know that I have more than dabbled in my fair share of mobile games. I've been knee-deep in them as I try to seek out the ones worth playing, which is why I am incredibly excited to say that I have something to share with you guys from one of the top dogs of the mobile platform, Raid Shadow Legends. And guys, we've got an offer here that you're not going to want to miss. What's really impressed me about Raid Shadow Legends is how much it looks like something you'd see on a home console. The game has incredibly stunning visuals with highly detailed champions and animations that are downright stunning and don't bog down performance. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was super intimidated going into this game because it's been around for a while and I thought that I was gonna get lost in the sauce. But simply starting out with the main campaign will set you up perfectly to level up your starting champions and give you a strong understanding of what the game is about. And right now, Raid Shadow Legends is running its latest global event, Alice's Adventure, which includes 5 brand new legendary champions inspired by the classic tale, like the Cheshire Cat and Knave of Hearts. And to get such champions, all you gotta do is open the game on 14 different days. Just on day 7, you can get Alice the Wanderer, but you gotta be quick and start by March 26 if you wanna earn Alice this way. You can also compete in the Mad Hatter Fusion event to get the legendary champion, Mad Hatter. Dude, look at this design, he is so creepy. You can continue to get awesome rewards by conquering the event dungeon, where the Queen of Hearts has made her home. Defeat her and her minions to get the exclusive Pinpoint gear set between January 8th and March 5th. There is so much content to dig into here, and you can get a head start by starting out with 2 epic heroes for free by downloading the game using my link or scanning my QR code. You will immediately get a huge starter pack with an epic champion, Tagoar, who's a great support champion to start with. Once you reach level 15, you'll get Fayne, which many consider her to be a better champion than some legendaries. Again, these champions are only available if you download the game using my link or by scanning my QR code. Guys, it would mean the world to me if you download the game using my custom link. If you go directly to the App Store, then you won't get any of the bonuses the Raids team sent me. It is incredibly exciting for me to get support from Raid's Shadow Legends, and I would love to continue to do so, and I'm gonna need your help. Once you have the game downloaded using my link, use promo code MonkeyKing to get legendary champion Sun Wukong for free. This is only available until February 7th, so you gotta be fast. Come find me under the name Diego Reviews and join my clan Diego's Review Crew. Thank you so much to Raid Shadow Legends for the support. Now back to the video. You might not know this about me because most of the time I'm talking about either a Spider-Man video game or some other comic book oriented one, but I'm a huge fan of the Uncharted franchise. I was completely blown away with the leap in cinematic storytelling in Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. I had never experienced anything else like it at the time. The graphics, cinematography, and the over-the-top set pieces were nothing short of captivating. But really, what impressed me the most was how fleshed out the core cast of characters were. It was the first time where I felt that a video game character could be someone that exists in real life. The performances were so genuine and nuanced that it felt like this breakthrough for acting in video games. Now, when it comes to the gameplay side of things, I haven't played any of the Uncharted games in almost 10 years. At the time, I remember thinking the gameplay was just as engaging and thrilling as the stories being told, having a perfect blend of platforming, cover-based shooting, and puzzles. But thinking back to it today, I can't help but expect that the platforming would feel too guided and safe, having many climbing sections that don't really offer any stakes. Like all you have to do is push the analog stick forward and hit the jump button every now and then. Perhaps the cover-based shooting might feel a bit repetitive. Nowadays, I much prefer a game that has a movement system that goes hand in hand with shooting. And the puzzles, the puzzles I actually think might be a gameplay element that has aged quite well. Despite those trepidations, I think that developing a game whose aim is to fit an Uncharted-like experience in your phone in the year 2010 is quite the undertaking. Shadow Guardian came out on December 16th, 2010, which I would consider to be the perfect time to release an Uncharted clone for smartphones. Uncharted 2 did gangbusters with review scores and received multiple awards, and the hype for Uncharted 3 was palpable. So, why not fill the void as you wait for Uncharted 3 with something that looks like it at a glance, and that you can take on the go? Yeah, Uncharted Golden Abyss was still a ways out. With that being said, let's half-tuck our shirts, grab your best hiking boots, and embark on a treasure hunting adventure. Oh man. Okay, so I know we've already established that this is unabashedly an Uncharted clone, but just look at this start screen. You can really fool the layman into thinking this is an Uncharted spin-off or mobile port. The hair, the shirt, even the belt across his torso is very reminiscent of Nathan Drake's signature gun holsters. Not to mention that this is pretty close to the box art of Uncharted Drake's Fortune. But hey, if you're gonna go for an Uncharted clone, it's best to go all in. So let's start up a new game and, a difficulty setting. Action or tactical. These mobile games tend to be pretty easy, especially since the BlueStacks emulator gives me the much appreciated benefit of using a controller. That's right, no pesky touch controls for me. So let's go the extra mile and play on tactical. This is interesting. I was expecting to start the game in the middle of a jungle, but instead we find ourselves in a lab, strapped to some sort of Metal Gear Solid-esque torture table. This distinguished fellow, called Novik, is attempting to extract some information from our noggin that'll lead him to a key of some sort that unlocks the secrets of the universe. Kinda vague and broad, but I guess we'll find out more later on. Unfortunately for him, we seem to be suffering from partial amnesia due to an explosion, and extracting the information he needs will take some time. What's this camera icon for on the top left? That's kinda cool. You can switch between multiple perspectives during cutscenes. Well, at least the cutscenes that take place in this interrogation room. I feel like I had more fun with this feature than the average person would, putting on a director's hat for a little bit and trying to make these cutscenes more cinematic as I see fit. But the tricky part is that I never knew what camera perspective was up next, so sometimes I'll be switching to one that doesn't even have any subjects on screen. So, Novik injects us with something as part of the memory extracting procedure and brings up Indonesia, where we apparently tracked him down. Now this is more like it. This is the kind of thing I was expecting to start with. Scaling up the side of a rocky cliff in the middle of a jungle. Oh my god, those tree backdrops are pretty rough. What are those, like 240p? Check out our boy Jason Call. He has the spirit of Nathan Drake, the fashion sense and taste in backpacks of Cole McGrath, and the hairstyle of Stan Fisher from the cancelled version of Splinter Cell Conviction. Once we reach the top of this cliff, we get ambushed by these Cobra Command looking guys and—
Don't move! Stay where you are!
Jesus Christ. I think that guy almost blew out the mic with that line reading. We get a little camera controls tutorial by following the commander's orders to look up at him, and then we run along the cliffside.
Faster! Great! Now jump over there!
Alright, settle down now. Now, the jump mechanic in this game is context sensitive, which means that we only have the ability to jump when the game deems it necessary. We can't jump on our own free will, only when we're at the side of a cliff that leads to a platform we can land on, or when we're climbing around. I'm not the biggest fan of this because it does take away from player agency, and this also means that there's never the threat of dying due to a failed jump. You will always land safely on something. So you're never really platforming, at least not the way I perceive that term. Platforming in a video game to me should offer a challenge to a degree. It should ask the player to take placement, timing, and precision into account. This is more so activating a prompt that pushes you to the next part of the level. It's certainly not the most engaging way to navigate a level. But on the other hand, it is intuitive in the way that it doesn't clutter the screen with virtual buttons when you take into account the way that this game was meant to be played. I also don't imagine that having a somewhat precision-based platformer on an iPhone with touch controls would feel very natural. The simplistic approach this game takes to platforming can also be said about the climbing mechanics. When you approach obvious bricks or handholds placed to signify a wall you can climb, all you have to do is push the virtual stick in the direction you want to climb, which more often than not, there's only one route to take. And when you come across a large gap between the next ledge or set of handholds, then you'll be prompted to push the jump button with no risk of failing. To be fair, this is pretty much the same way climbing was handled in the Uncharted games, or at least the Uncharted games released at the time. I know later on Uncharted 4 would introduce the rope and piton, which would offer a bit more depth to climbing, but throughout Uncharted 2, all you ever really have to do is push the analog stick in the direction you want to climb, and jump whenever there's something out of reach. Yeah, you have the agency to push the jump button whenever you want, but if you're doing it in a spot that does not deem it necessary, you would just be jumping to your demise. But I guess that's a huge element of what makes video games fun, right? You had the complete freedom to do that, so you're subjected to whatever the consequences of that action may be. Well, even though we don't have the freedom to do that in Shadow Guardian, I think it still manages to capture that Uncharted-like spirit. You'll often be going through extensive climbing sequences that would require superhuman grip, upper body strength, and endurance. Not to mention the situational awareness of a friggin' hawk. Even though this game's graphics are nowhere near being considered lifelike or awe-inspiring, at least to you, I love this low-poly, smudgy textured goodness. It is cool to climb all sorts of vastly different structures like these pillars in Egypt, this ancient statue, or a cliffside in the Antarctic as the camera sweeps around and gives us these cinematic angles that show off the different vistas. This is honestly the best thing I can say about climbing around in this game. It lacks anything engaging from a mechanical standpoint, but it makes up for it by offering interesting visuals and some slapstick humor whenever a ledge gives out and we see Jason Call tumble and get knocked upside the head. Again, very much inspired by all the close calls Nathan Drake goes through on a regular basis. Alright, so after following Mr. Fancy Goggles' orders, we give him a taste of our close quarters combat training and steal his pistol. Of course, another major aspect of the Uncharted games, well, not even just Uncharted, but a lot of action games of this generation, is third-person cover-based shooting. And I think this is an aspect that Shadow Guardian nails as best as it possibly could. You can snap to cover with another context-sensitive prompt, vault over the cover, and quickly roll to adjacent cover. It has everything you come to expect from this type of shooting system. It even has blind firing, at the cost of being less accurate, of course. A crutch this game offers to compensate for this game's intended platform is an incredibly generous lock-on system. Pressing the aim button whenever you're looking in the general direction of your enemies will have Jason Call snap his sights on one of the unlucky poor bastards as long as they're within range. And this works for any weapon in your arsenal, which goes on to be exceedingly extensive. Pistols, shotguns, machine guns, sniper rifles, and rocket launchers to name a few. You can free aim as well by dragging your sights away from the enemy if you so choose to go for those headshots. But really the most effective strategy is to pop out of cover, let the aiming system snap to whatever enemy it chooses, pump some shots into him, and then get back into cover if you need to recover some health. Yep, this game has the same health system as Uncharted, surprise surprise, and you rinse and repeat those steps. You can also shoot from the hip, and that functions with a lock-on system as well, and it also allows you to roll to the side to minimize incoming damage. All things considered, these shooting mechanics are pretty damn good. I mean, this is what a lot of video games were about back in the late 2000s and early to mid 2010s. Nowadays, third-person shooters are a bit more creative by implementing some sort of extra ingredient that goes hand in hand with shooting, like Returnal's dashing mechanic, Space Marine 2's brutal melee combat system, and yes, even Suicide Squad's traversal system. Hey, credit given where credit is due. But man, back during the PS3 and 360 days, you can toss a rock in any direction and you'll be guaranteed to hit a Gears of War inspired third-person shooter. And Shadow Guardian perfectly captures that in a pocket-sized package. Here's a move that I went damn near the whole game not knowing you can do. If you're shooting and walking backwards away from the enemy and you run into waist-high cover, Jason will slide over it in reverse and continue his motion. That's pretty damn cool. That's something this game has over Uncharted, right? I don't think you can do that in the Uncharted games. Enemies come in different types, like your standard grunt, ones that like to get up close and personal, riot shield wielding ones, and your typical heavy type wielding a big ol' minigun. Their designs are something that helps set them apart from the goons you come across in the Uncharted games. Nate is often coming across scrappy pirate types, or mercenaries in standard body armor, or more basic tactical gear. The bad guys in Shadow Guardian have some serious funding. Their gear is really high tech, to the point where they almost look like they belong in a different game, like Metal Gear Solid or Killzone. Look at those helmets and visors. Unfortunately, they don't really pose a challenge. Sticking to a single cover and popping up to take them out one at a time worked just fine most of the time. Even though I chose tactical difficulty, these guys don't really do much in the realm of flanking or even tossing grenades as a way to force you out of cover and make the most out of the arena. They do push towards you, and sometimes I did find myself having to apply some haste to take them out, fearing that they might catch up to me and outnumber me in close quarters, but I never really broke a sweat. After getting through the first major combat encounter, we get held up by some of Novik's guards. But thankfully, Lara Croft makes a cameo appearance and saves our hide. Alright, no, this is Natasha Novik, and as you can easily predict, this is our nemesis' daughter. Back at the torture room, Novik reveals that she betrayed him and stole one of the statues he needs to carry out his mission, no doubt to stop him from unlocking insurmountable powers no man should have. After a hefty punch to the cranium, we recall the next part of our adventure, a temple in Egypt. Ooh, and the change in wardrobe to go along with the scenery. I actually really admired this detail. Jason has a different outfit in each level, and it reminded me a lot of the old Tomb Raider games, as it is something Lara Croft would often do. Is that an Oscar? Oh yeah, these are treasures scattered throughout levels for you to collect, and they're pretty hard to miss. For one, they're massive, levitate, and spin around pretty aggressively. And the game doesn't really try all that hard to obscure them. I mentioned earlier that climbing sequences only offer a single route to follow. Well, occasionally you'll come across a few bigger structures that have an optional path you can stray into, and these will lead into a treasure that's tucked away. But even these are hard to miss because as the camera is sweeping around when you're going through a climbing section, it'll make sure to have that collectible in frame as a way to say, hey, you see that? You want to check that out maybe? Could be something you might be interested in, I don't know. I gotta say, the choice in models to turn into collectible treasures is interesting. The first one I collected was a little pharaoh looking dude, which was appropriate, but then they started flipping assets to turn into these treasures like helicopters and the very same guards you fight. That doesn't make me feel like I'm discovering a priceless lost treasure, but rather like I'm finding some kid's lost action figures. But isn't that the greatest treasure of all? This level is also where you encounter what I guess I would consider a reoccurring mini-boss, and that'd be this attack helicopter. Colonel, what's a Russian gunship doing here? Honestly, I don't even know what part of the world this chopper hails from. What a strange design. The double tail booms, the extra flaps on the sides. I'm no helicopter expert, but much like the soldier NPCs in this game, it looks like it would be better suited to a sci-fi game. Actually, a lot of the vehicles in this game do. Later on, you fight this big convoy thing, and it has these turrets that pop out of it, all automated and advanced looking. It also has some design elements that remind me of a car you would see in Mad Max. Weird design choices aside, I did think the encounter against the helicopter was pretty cool. It's not the most challenging fight, but I did die once after firing the helicopter while I was a little too close to my target. With that out of the way, we make our way to the inner part of the temple. But before we get to explore this ancient tomb, we go back to the torture room where we learn a bit about Jason Call's background. He works for an agency called Tertiary. They're all about studying ancient artifacts linked to supernatural phenomena around the world. I love the bluntness in that. Someone like Nathan Drake or Indiana Jones are more concerned with the value of a lost idol or something like that. And then they happen to come across some sort of supernatural thing. Tertiary is like, fuck that, we know there are UFOs, scary monsters, and all sorts of freaky shit out there, and we want to know about them. What both parties are interested in this adventure are statues that reveal the location to something called the prima materia, which translates to the original formless material from which all matter is created. This is what Novik meant when he said he was seeking out the secret to all matter in the universe. So back at the temple, we set our sights on one of the statues, but first we have to climb our way up this intricate structure. Something I wish the game would let me turn off in the settings are these red markers pointing out the way you're supposed to go. The game does a pretty good job communicating to the player what ledges you can grab, and the handholds are really obvious and stick out as what you're supposed to interact with. I can tell that I would never have an issue figuring out which way I'm supposed to go, so these red markers are a bit excessive. I only expected them to be present in the tutorial level as a way to teach players what to look out for, but they're persistent throughout the entire game and are just way too handholdy. They also point out switches and pretty much anything you're supposed to interact with, and it's like, geez man, give me a chance to figure it out myself. Like this part where you're supposed to match these colored gems to their corresponding statue. The statues very clearly emit the light of their respective gems, and you're supposed to slot in the gems as quickly as possible because the room is getting sprayed with poisonous gas. But any sense of tension or danger is completely taken away when all you have to do is follow the red marker. There's no room for error to go, blah, blah, wrong statue, I gotta go get it in the right one before this poisonous gas kills me. In this climbing section, they throw in something that could have potentially made these a bit more interesting and engaging, and that's these giant scarabs that blow their hot-ass breath at you. These would have offered something in the form of a challenge if they weren't so menial. If you get hit by their breath, you take a bit of damage, but all you have to do is hang there for a bit to recover your health. It would have been far more consequential if getting hit just a single time would cause you to fall off and force you to restart the climbing section. After climbing this crumbling statue, we lower its giant sword to use as a makeshift bridge and come across our first significant puzzle. We have these 3 rotating mechanisms, and spinning them around will change the position of these walkways in the middle of the room to take you to the other side. Honestly, it didn't take me more than a few seconds to get the solution. I nailed it on my first go, and every puzzle I came across played out the same way. These things are below elementary level, and well, I didn't really expect to come across anything that would stump me, so even though they were all super easy, they serve the purpose of offering something to break up all the climbing and shooting you'll more often do. Well, this is most certainly a boss room if I've ever seen one. And there's the statue we need to collect. Any second now. Yes, there it is. I was hoping for some ridiculously big monster to come out of the shadows, and this mega scarab did not disappoint. Look, it even has the big dumb glowing weak spots for us to shoot at. I gotta say, this boss did its thing. Not only do you have to deal with the mega scarab flying around and shooting toxic gases at you, but you also have its smaller minions pestering around. Not a massive challenge by any means, but still an entertaining fight. The next part of our adventure takes place in a sunken temple, which means we get to whip out this snazzy wetsuit. After going through some of our usual monkeying around antics and some mirror puzzles, we come across this ugly ghoul looking thing. Oh yeah, if the Mega Scarab wasn't enough, we're full on in supernatural territory now. These guys are known as Guardians. Pretty self-explanatory given their name. Their role is to protect the statues from invaders. I think they got a pretty cool design. They're made of some sort of organic green mass, but what's really cool about their design is that they have these multiple skeletons lashed onto their bodies, giving them support and structure. It makes me wonder how exactly these guardian creatures came to be. Are they a natural species of this buried part of the world? Or perhaps the product of some sacrificial rituals practiced by an ancient civilization? However they came to be, they're not very tough to take down. All you gotta do is pump enough lead into them like any other enemy, and they'll come tumbling down. Let them get too close though, and they'll perform a grapple attack that you do have an opportunity to break free from if you tap the action button quick enough, but it will do a fair bit of damage if you fail to do so. The last combat sequence in this level was one of the few that I actually died in once or twice. Mercenaries come pouring in from this doorway in hefty numbers, but what really caught me off guard were the guardians that come from under the platform. A couple of them snuck up behind me as I was taking cover and focusing on Novik's men, and like I said, up close these big oafs can be a threat. This is certainly the most effective way to make these combat sequences more challenging. Most of the time, enemies come from one direction and all you have to do is hunker down and make sure you take them out quick enough that they don't close the gap between you and them. Having enemies come in multiple directions forces you to move around and actually make use of the cover provided. God damn, the vibration on that cell phone is crazy. So, like I've expressed many times already, it's no secret that this game is looking to capitalize on the Uncharted franchise. But when it comes to the environments we've charted so far in this game, none of them have been a clear copy of one found in Uncharted. They've been generic enough that they'd be exactly the kind of setting you'd expect to find in a game where you play as a treasure hunting adventurer. A jungle setting, the deserts of Egypt, a lost temple, pretty by the numbers. This next level, however, was giving me vivid flashbacks to the Nepal level from Uncharted 2. The city here just generally has a similar look to the one in Uncharted 2. Certain sections have damn near the same layout, like how this street is blocked off by a crashed truck, and opposite of that wreckage is this piece of cover with enemies placed on the left side of the street. You're parkouring through rooftops for a significant chunk of the level, and you face off against a helicopter. It's like a damn near carbon copy of that Uncharted 2 level. Though I have to say, the way Jason Call takes out the chopper is infinitely more badass than how Nate does it. That was some X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged edition shit. Aw man, but I missed the treasure! I need it. It was at this point in the game that I realized I was neglecting the melee attacks you can do. And let me tell you, Jason Call here is an absolute savage when it comes to throwing hands. He snaps necks and tears helpless guards apart with no remorse. I was surprised with how much blood the game shows when pulling off these attacks. It's so brutal. Skipping forward a bit, Novik has gathered all the statues he needs to access the Prima Materia, and we're to rush through this temple in India to intercept them. I really like this puzzle where you have to pose this large statue to match the picture behind it. It's really easy and doesn't require many steps to solve, but I thought the idea was cool. This level also has a climbing section that throws a wrench into the usual formula. Normally, you make your way through these at your leisure, but this one is actually timed. Jason activates a booby trap that has these spiked walls closing in on him, and if you stop moving for even a second, you won't make it out on time. Like I mentioned before, most climbing sections don't ask anything of the player beyond pushing the analog stick in the direction you're supposed to go and jumping across gaps. So this one having something that can actually kill the player and force them to restart the sequence made things more interesting. We catch up to Novik and see that he's nearing the end of the ritual with the statues, but we awaken this massive golem to try to stop him. The whole game has been pretty much smooth sailing up until this part. This sequence has a significant difficulty spike, so much so that I ended up dying like 4 times. What makes it hard is that you're under a time limit, Enemies come in significant numbers, and normally I would just plant myself behind some cover and take them out one at a time. But if you take this approach, the golem trying to stop the ritual will be destroyed by these turrets. So you really have to be aggressive here and push forward while making sure you don't leave yourself exposed for too long that you end up taking too many shots from the enemies. So for this section, I couldn't really rely on the auto aim too much because I had to adjust my aim so I can land some headshots and take enemies out as quickly as possible. Once we reach the end of the walkway, we find the rocket launcher we can use to take out the turrets, but then a helicopter comes flying in. So now you have to make sure that you get a proper angle so you can shoot the turrets with the RPG while dealing with the helicopter and more enemies coming in from your flanks. This section is broken up into 3 parts, reaching the end of the walkway to pick up the RPG, destroying the 3 turrets, and then finally taking down the helicopter. Sure, it doesn't sound like much, but if you die within these sections, you have to start from before you pick up the RPG. Admittedly, I had to lock in for this. After taking out the helicopter, something goes wrong with the ritual that sets off the explosion that nearly kills Jason Call and scrambles his mind. We're now caught up to current events, and apparently that blast imprinted the key Novik needs into Jason's neurological system, so he needs to recreate the near-death experience that— Jesus Christ! You shot him! You fucking shot him! I don't think the health regeneration mechanic is gonna kick in for that. Well, thankfully the statues here give Jason another chance at life, and now we're taken against our will to help Novik open the gate. But something causes the convoy transporting us to derail, and now we have to trudge our way through the snowy mountains. I love the winter gear Jason wears here. It's giving me Siphon Filter vibes. I also really love the detail of Jason's face being all battered and bruised. So after fighting a bunch of Novik's mercs and some frosty guardians, we come across another golem. Golem? Maybe we can use him as some backup muscle. That other one was friendly, right? What do you say we free this guy from his icy cell and— oh, wait a second. Holy crap, we get to control the golem? Oh man, this is cool. This thing is slow as shit, but it packs one hell of a punch. You have this arm cannon thing that makes quick work out of groups of enemies and vehicles. But my favorite thing to do is to hold the sprint button and just barrel through anything that gets in my way. Oh dude, no way, a mech fight? This game just went full on MGS4. This is sick. While the concept of this fight is rad as hell, actually playing it is a different story. Like I said, controlling the golem is super slow, which makes the entire fight feel like it plays out at a snail's pace. You shoot Novik's blue golem when he's at a distance, and whenever he manages to get up close, just do a melee attack, which admittedly does result in a pretty cool animation. Rinse and repeat until you defeat Novik, and you've reached the end of the game. Though you'd be forgiven for not realizing that right away because the ending is really awkward. We finally reached the mysterious mystical gate that the statues we spent the entire game collecting are supposed to open. What the game has been building up to this whole time is about to be revealed. But at the same time, I can tell that this is where the game is about to end. We just played through what was very clearly the climax of the story with the golem fight. Novik has been defeated, and things feel like they're winding down. Not to mention that at this point I've been playing the game for almost 4 hours, which is certainly longer than I expected this game to be, so that just further reassured me that the game was wrapping up. But we hear Natasha talking over Novik's dropped radio, and this dialogue feels like it's building towards something. She's brought backup from Jason's agency, Tertiary, and she's talking about a big storm that's heading their way and urges Jason to take shelter inside the gate. It certainly doesn't feel like the adventure is over. Maybe one last level in some sort of mystical plane or lost city within the gate? The discarded statues zip to slots surrounding the gate and open the cryptic doorway. And then— credits. Man, what a tease. I mean, I guess it's not like cliffhanger endings aren't a thing. There's certainly an approach you can take. Actually, this ending reminds me a lot of the Jak and Daxter ending, where you also unlock a big mystical gate after collecting artifacts, and then the game abruptly ends. Funnily enough, that game was developed by Naughty Dog, which of course, is the very same studio behind the Uncharted series. Nothing is a coincidence, everything is connected. But this ending is sullied by the fact that Shadow Guardian never got a sequel, which is surprising given that this game fared pretty well with reviews, and Gameloft is no stranger with pumping out sequel after sequel. Maybe it didn't do well in terms of sales, but I can say that I absolutely would have enjoyed this in between the big Uncharted releases, and would have been impressed by what Gameloft was able to pack in a smartphone. Indeed, a lost relic from a time gone by. But this brings us to the end of our adventure. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you gave it a like, leave a comment, letting me know what game I should check out next, and subscribe to be notified of when that video goes live. Also, support me by downloading Raid Shadow Legends using my link or QR code to claim those epic champions. It's incredibly exciting for me to get these opportunities, and I would love to continue to do so with your help. Special thanks to Sam, Carlos Fontes, and the Minor Prophet for joining my membership at the top tier. You guys are certified superheroes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.